Yo guys, what is up? It's Teach here, coming at you again with another video, and I am here to show you something that helps me a lot. I have done all kinds of different stuff, and some people have asked, Teach, how do you set up your own servers? Here is going to be my kind of walkthrough setup. This is whether you're setting up a server on any sort of website or just playing your own solo server or even making your own dedicated server. Let's talk about how to do it. Now, first off, obviously, this is the Arc home screen. Your options are pretty simple. You can even go as far as you can see. This is something people forget about. A total conversion just means that you're playing Primitive Plus, which is amazing. I love Primitive Plus. You just don't have modern technology in the game. So if you click that, that's a big difference. So be careful about that. But host and local. Now, this is where you want to go, and it's going to bring up a screen that looks like this. Now, this is a lot of stuff. Now, if you don't know anything about it, don't freak out. It's really simple. Let's talk about what it is. Now, obviously in the middle, you have all of your maps, okay? Now, technically speaking, you can create your own. Running a dedicated server means that you have to have your own device that is constantly turned on and running in order to run a server. Then you would be able to run your own private server and kind of do whatever you wanted on it, but it has to constantly be running. That's the negative side of it. You can't play from the same device either. So most people are going to host a non-dedicated section, and basically that just means that you are running it just like a solo player mode. So that's what you want to click. Single player also works just fine, but non-dedicated would mean your friends could still join. They would just have to be near you. So all of the maps are right here. Now, these are the storied arcs, and then custom arcs are any maps that are not DLC maps. Now, the Center, Rag, Valguero, and Crystal Isles are all mod maps. They are not made by Arc. Only these are. So anything that you would additionally download, like Antarctica, Crystal Isles, ISO, tons of different maps, they're all in this section. So that is all about this. Now, there are two buttons on top that you should know about. They are dangerous: deleting server data and deleting single player data. You click these, all of your information is gone for your single player or your map. So be careful about that. And I usually just avoid this unless you have an issue with Arc. Then you want to do it, but that's about it. Now, there are also this section over here for computer-based people. This is your mods section: Arc-sponsored mods, new mods, and then update mods. This is the same thing as the online resources. Any available mods would be down here, and you just click on them and then click this button to add them to what your active mod list is. And same thing up here. You just click this button to remove them from your active mod list. And then let's get to the most important part. Now we've got general, advanced, and Engrams. Now, this is where like the meat and where people pay people and all this kinds of stuff. It's very difficult, but once you learn the process, it's really, really easy. It's not difficult at all. All right, so this is every single thing that happens in Arc. Think about it like if you're in real life having like multipliers, or in any game, like when you get a multiplier, that's pretty much what you're adjusting for this entire section. Now, difficulty level. This is the most important. Notice this. It affects the level of creatures and quality of loot drops. 1.0 is official settings. Anything above that means that you're going to go higher level dinos. Anything beneath 1.0 means lower level dinos. Now, that's something you want to keep an eye out for, because if you want to set it to level 150, 1.0 is where you want it. If you want like 180, I think it's like 6.0. And then higher and higher, obviously, you can do like thousands of level dinos. It's up to you, though. Now, these settings, obviously, most of them are pretty self-explanatory, but I'll kind of walk you through which ones you want to know and which ones you might not want to know. So we'll see. So dino damage, pretty self-explanatory. Increasing it means that dinosaurs are going to do more damage. So if I go up here, dinosaurs are going to do crazy damage. I don't really care for that, so I'm not going to do that. Player damage, that's how much damage you do to anything, whether it's dinosaurs, structures, all of that stuff. Now, structure damage. Now, whatever happens when damage structures, so like spike walls, traps, any of those things, you can increase the amount of damage they do by increasing this or decreasing it. Now, obviously above 1, more damage. Player resistances. This one's pretty easy. Whenever you are attacked by something like torpidity, poisons, any of that stuff, increasing this is going to actually basically increase the amount of, how do I say this properly, damage that you take. Decreasing this is going to increase the amount of resistance that you have. So you can take less damage by dropping this. And that's the same thing for dino resistance. Lower numbers means you actually are able to survive longer. Higher numbers, it's more difficult to survive. Structure resistance, same thing. Very simple. XP multiplier is pretty easy. 1.0 would mean you're on official settings. If you increase this, that means like 3.0, I think it's smalls, stuff like that. So it'd be pretty easy to go to increased on that. Taming speed, same thing. Increased means quicker tames. Structure damage, whenever you damage a structure, there is a cooldown that it takes that you can't pick it up or repair it, stuff like that. Dino turret damage, this is pretty easy. Increasing this increases the amount of damage that turrets actually deal. So that's something that you should keep an eye out for. That's something that's interesting. So be very cautious of that. Dino harvesting damage. This is used when you want to increase the amount of stuff that your dinosaurs get. So like berry increase, let's say you went up to like 6.0 or down to 0.01, 3.0. There's a whole bunch of ranged numbers that you can go with here. It's something that you have the option to. I don't personally care. It's up to you what you'd like to do. So keep that in mind. Harvest amount. This is something that you want to keep an eye out for because it's the amount of stuff that you actually gather. That's something that you want to keep an eye out for. So like, let's say you hit a tree or you hit any form of object. It's going to give you increased with higher values. Player character water drain. Obviously, this is something that's self-explanatory. If you increase it, you get thirsty faster. Same thing with the food drain. Same thing with the dino food drain, stamina drain, all of that stuff. Increased numbers mean that you increase the amount of stuff that you're going to need. Same thing with stamina. If you increase this, dinosaurs are going to get tired faster. So keep an eye on that. All of this health recovery is, a little bit different. It's the same thing, same concept as this, though. Higher values mean you heal faster. So that's something interesting. Harvesting damage, you increase this, your dinosaurs are going to gather more things. So do that carefully, because if you increase this too much, you are going to have some crazy, crazy, crazy resource values. So keep an eye on that. Dino count. Now this is very, very careful. I would never raise this above 1.0. The reason that I would not do that is very simple. When you have too many dinosaurs spawning in, your server will crash and your game will crash because the game will do what you ask it to. It's just, how do I say this properly? Do not put it above 1. That's just a safe way to put it. Tether distance. This is quite literally if you are with somebody, how far they can go away from you. Now, the increased values are going to cause more strain on your game. Keep an eye on that. Now, all of these check marks. Now, these are interesting. This is all personal preference. You need to do what you want. I always enable third-person view because I like third-person view. Keep that in mind. Voice chat, you can click on both of these because it allows you to talk to people. I usually have these on when I'm doing a server-based thing because I like to know or have people able to select the button of when people leave or enter. Admin logging is a good idea because if you have admins or something like that, it'll tell you exactly what they're doing. Crosshair, always have that on. No force HUD. You can have it on. It doesn't matter. I think it's good to leave it off, but that's up to you because you can turn it off on your own. Loot crates, I don't disable those. Hardcore mode simply means that every time you die, you're going to go back to level 1. I wouldn't enable that. If you don't want to do any damage to players or their dinos, click this button. If you click this button, it basically means that you have the ability to never take damage from another person's dinos. Disable friendly fire, important to have access to this. So let's be careful because do you want to be able to shoot your teammates or not? All right. Let's keep going down this list. Show map, player location. These are all pretty self-explanatory. I'm kind of going to go over the important ones, so you have to decide. Now this is my personal preference. If it was me, I would 100% click these if you're running a map on a website. Because if you don't click these, it's going to give people the access to your servers. You're going to, unless you want to be able to transfer between servers and you have a cluster, turn them off. Very simple. You have no need for it. Turn it off. Maximum difficulty. You can see this right here. Max dinosaur level. You can do that. It's up to you. PvP gamma, I would leave that on because that means you can change your gamma. You can turn it off. It's up to you, but it's your call. Single player settings, these are all pretty self-explanatory. You can turn this off and it kind of changes it a little bit for you. This allows it so you can have more than one floor on any platform. I like leaving that on because if I'm playing solo player mode, I like to be creative, and that's kind of fun. I would turn this on because this means that you can clip into anything. So like, you know how it's super annoying sometimes that you can't place a structure somewhere? Yeah, this fixes that. So keep an eye on that. Unlimited respecs, I always select that because it's nice to have. Obviously, you can choose these if you want to. But having dino taming and riding disabled and stuff like that, be cautious. I wouldn't worry about those. Now let's go ahead and click on advanced. This is pretty easy. These are all self-explanatory. I'm not going to go super in depth because it's about what you want and there's more sections than anything else. So we'll just go quickly through these. PvE timer. You can literally see it says pretty self-explanatory. Allows switching from PvE to PvP mode at pre-specified in-game times. Okay, so that's something you need to keep an eye out for. Time use, tribe alliances. Do you want them to have or not? You can declare war with PvE, allow tribe war. So that's something that you can. I like this if you're running a PvP server and you want it to be a little more controlled. Having the PvP allow tribe war is something that is very nice to have, and turn that cancel on can be quite helpful too. PvE gamma, it depends on what you want to do. Do you want gamma on or off? Cave building, I usually turn that on because I like having the ability to buy and put stuff in caves. Flyer carry, I usually enable that, but if you're playing PvE and you don't want people trolling you, make sure you leave that off. Preventative structure volumes, this is something that's your choice. If you're playing solo, don't worry about it. Disable structure decay, I usually click that in solo player because if I build something, I want to be able to go back to it whenever I want to. That's my choice. Disable dino decay, that's up to you. You can see it's pretty self-explanatory. Dinos will disappear after a long period of time if no one's on. So now, next couple of things. PvE structure decay, you can increase or decrease it. It doesn't matter too much. Dino decay period, it's up to you. Auto PvE start time seconds. This is literally, you can set that thing that we talked about above where you can make it so there is time for PvP and there is time for PvE. Now that's something you want to be careful about because obviously setting the wrong times will cause issues. These are pretty easy ones to describe. I leave this off. This means that you can't get like swamp aids and stuff like that or whatever you want to call it. I don't know the type. Swamp fever, swamp stuff. I don't know. Non-permanent diseases. This is something I don't check this because that means that, you know, issues. I don't know. I like the difficulty of the game. Force allow cave flying. If you want to be able to fly in caves, turn it on. PvP dino decay, up to you. Override structure platform prevention. Again, I would check this so that way you can kind of like build wherever you want and how you want. ORP, offline raid protection. This is pretty simple. If you're in a server where you want to have offline raid, turn it on. And it basically means that as soon as you go offline, your base is protected for X amount of things. So that's something you should keep in mind. And that's something to keep an eye out for. Now, this right here, you can obviously figure that out. Log off time period, and you can mess with these all you want. It just means that you can adjust how quickly you get offline raid protection. Now, the next couple of things, world settings. This is disabling the imprint dino buff. This is obvious. I would turn this one on because let's say you've got 3 or 4 people having the ability to have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different people imprint a dino is amazing. Now, if you want extreme frustration, turn this all the way up and you're going to get some serious interval pooping. That means like that. But I mean, honestly, I don't really care about it. So I usually leave it at 1 because it's still nice to have the Phiomia. Changing these things is very interesting. I would not go too extreme because if you go too extreme, you're going to have some crazy, crazy stuff going on. Egg lay interval, do not increase this very much because you're going to have huge server lag. So be cautious. Mating interval, I wouldn't increase it too much. It kind of ruins the game experience. Egg hatch speed, I wouldn't increase it too much, but you can. It doesn't really change this. If you increase it, obviously you're going to have hatching of eggs and maturation time quicker. All right, baby mature speed. This increases the rate at which babies mature. I don't think it's easy. I mean, increased numbers means that they raise faster. Baby food consumption speed. This is something that obviously it's pretty self-explanatory. If you decrease it, it means they're not going to eat anything at all. Harvest health. This is something that's a scaling thing. Be very careful about increasing this because you're going to increase huge lag on your server if you increase the harvest health. Resources respawn period. Obviously self-explanatory. The quicker you have it, the quicker it's going to show back up. Be very careful. Lower numbers are going to mean that it's very, very laggy on your server. And these are all pretty self-explanatory as well. The baby cuddles and stuff like that. You're going to want to be careful about how you do that. If you make this happen more often, it means that you're going to have to more frequently do it. So you can kind of scale this how you'd like to, but it's up to you. All right, next couple of things. Day cycle speed. If you decrease this number, it means that day lasts longer. Decrease this one, the time, so on and so forth. Decreased numbers means that it lasts longer unless you're actually on the comparison. Value less than 1 slows down the cycle, obviously. And then value less than 1, you can see it's usually pretty self-explanatory. I leave these pretty standard right at the 1s because it's still nice to have that middle section, which is important to have for, in my opinion. Spoiling time. Multiplier that influences the spoil time on all items. Obviously, you can do whatever you want with that. Increasing the spoil time can be bad, though. Sometimes it sounds nice, but you sometimes need spoiled meat. So be careful about that. Item decomposition time. Obviously, you can see it right here. Your call on whether you use that or not. Corpse decomp time. Obviously, again, these are all things that you choose if you want them. No resource radius. Now, this is important. If you change this, it's going to fundamentally change how things react with you. If you increase this number and decrease this number, it's going to change how quickly things come near you and how much stuff grows near your base. So be careful about that. Crop growth speed. If you increase this too much, you are going to have huge lag on your server. So be very careful. Same thing with the decay, because think about it. The more stuff you put into your server, the more danger it has. All right, so let's keep going down this list. And then stats per level. These are all self-explanatory. I'm not going to sit here for days and explain this one. Increasing this means that they have higher numbers. Decreasing is lower numbers. Be careful about how much you adjust this, because increasing it too much is going to mean that you're going to have some crazy stats. Decreasing it too much it just means that nothing's going to change. So be very cautious with how you do this. That's what I'm telling you. The standard numbers are pretty good because if you adjust it even just a little bit, you're making drastic changes. So keep in mind, yes, Arc is fun, but changing these numbers too high or too low ruins the game. So be very careful. That's all I've got to tell you about that one. Same thing with your player stats. Some people like to just crank up some of these things. Don't do that. If you crank it up, it just ruins the Arc experience. Be careful. Now, same thing with these multipliers. If you ruin it by putting them too high, like I've seen people put these kill harvests into like hundreds. It's like instantaneous hundreds of levels. So if you want that, cool. If you don't, leave them where they're at or drop them even. It can make it pretty fun. And then there's some obvious miscellaneous settings. You can set max players, max experience points, Dino max experience points, and then obviously this kind of stuff. You can unalign basing. Basically, you can kind of change the fundamental rules of Arc with these options. Floating damage text is one of my favorite things to turn on. I usually check this because this lets the green number show up over something's head so you see how much damage is being done. It's always helpful for me. Custom recipes, very useful. I would make sure this is off, otherwise you can keep Titanosaur on and alive forever. So be careful about that. If that's what you want, do it. And you can see the rest of these. You can make it so it's impossible to keep them alive. It makes it so they last longer, so on and so forth. But there's lots of different things right here. Custom recipe effectiveness, supply. If you increase this, you're going to have better loot. Same thing with fishing. I like to increase the fishing loot because fishing's kind of fun and you get randomized loot. So sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't get lucky. So keep an eye out for that. Your call. Fuel consumption changes the amount of fuel that goes through. And then the last page, Engrams. Now, this is pretty self-explanatory. If you want something turned on or off, you can click on it. And it kind of like gives you options, allowed engrams. You can go through this and see that you have a bunch more engrams than you really think. And then there's a lot of stuff here. So I would be very cautious on double clicking things because you're turning them on and off based on what you're doing. But if you turn them off, it means you cannot learn, you cannot create, you can't do any of that stuff because the code is kind of removed from your game. So if you're like, dude, I'm really pissed off by GPS, click it, double click it, it's gone. There's nothing you can do to bring that back in. So that's quite helpful, I guess. If you don't like notes, get rid of the notes, but it's up to you. So all you have to do now that you've got all this set up, whether you're on a personal server or a group server or whatever you want, start the server and you're good to go, my friends. Hopefully this helps you set some up. I'll do more in-depth guides. This is kind of like a quick run over everything, how to do it. And hopefully it does help you out. And other than that, teach. Out.